Good evening. Welcome. I'm Steve Greenwald. I'm Director of the Carey Institute for Government Reform. And on behalf of the Institute and Wagner College, we welcome you to the college and to this debate that we are sponsoring. These kinds of events are very important in the life of our democracy. This sort of open debates among the candidates, so we're pleased that we could host it this evening. And I want to say welcome to the candidates, all of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any Wagner graduates here?
Wagner High School.
Any Wagner graduates here? Okay. In any event, we're looking forward to the debate, and at this point I'm going to turn it over to the convener and moderator, Barbara Kent. Barbara.
Okay, my name is Barbara Kent. I am a volunteer with Swing Left, and I am the moderator for tonight's debate. And I'd like to start by thanking all of you for coming out tonight. I want to thank Wagner College, the Carey Institute, the Staten Island Democratic Party, and Swing Left for co-hosting tonight's event. And I too want to thank all of you for being here tonight. Now I just want to take a moment and tell you what the format is. Each candidate will be able to give a 2-minute opening statement. And then each candidate will give a 2-minute closing statement. I have 6 questions for the candidates. There will also be questions from the audience. There are volunteers handing out cards. If you want a particular candidate to answer the question, you must indicate that on the card. Hopefully some of you have heard me. Okay, let me see. So with regard to my questions, the topics, but not the questions, have been shared with the candidates, and they do not know which topic they are getting. Each candidate will get a question. That candidate gets 2 minutes to answer. Then the other 5 gentlemen get 1 minute if they wish it to respond in any way to the question asked. If anyone wants to register to vote or to donate money, there are people, Sophia and Gray, out there to help you do either or both of those. And before closing, I just want to thank 2 people publicly. And they are Suzanne D'Amato and Sharona Parchment. Without either of those ladies, this debate would not take place tonight. So thank you all again for coming. And now we're going to start with the opening statements. Mr. DeVito.
Is it on? Hi, I'm Michael DeVito, and I have lived a life of service. I am a dad. I'm a husband. I'm a teacher and a mediator. I'm a U.S. Marine and a union member. My experience doesn't come from a textbook. It doesn't come from a listening tour or a New York Times article or a year-long internship. My experience, it comes from serving you. My experience comes from serving the homeless, the uneducated, those that have made bad choices and tough choices. My experience comes from working with this community. And that experience has told me that we are all just 1 or 2 bad breaks away from losing everything, because the middle class has become the new poor, and the poor are being imprisoned. Aren't you getting tired of constantly feeling like the rug is going to be pulled out from under you? Don't you want Medicare for all? Because I do. Don't you want to retire with dignity, afford the roof over your head? Can't we finally just get the transportation that we need? That's why I am fighting for a Green New Deal. I am fighting to build this nation up with American parts and union labor to create jobs that are not going to be outsourced. I intend to rewrite the rules of this rigged economy that only favors the rich. And we can't do that right now because the establishment has their foot on our necks. DC and the old guard, they picked a candidate for you. Max Rose says that DC is broken. He says he won't take any corporate PAC money, and yet he'll take money through PACs. I am in front of you right now, no smoke and mirrors. I am unbought and I am unbossed. I am here with you and I am here for you. Thank you.
Good evening, Staten Island. Y'all fired up? Yeah. Right? Yeah, I am. So let's get at it. My name is Zach Emick, and I am here to win your vote. I'm a native New Yorker, a father of 4, a proud feminist, a Christian, an MIT and Michigan grad, and a businessman. You know, as the father of small children, I'm really trying to raise them to face problems head on. Don't procrastinate. Don't waver. And tonight we're going to talk about a lot of important and critical issues to the community. But to me, there's one moral crisis facing our democracy that looms above all the rest of them. And that is the president's repeated, flagrant, public violations of his oath of office. Now, my friends, the solution to this is, it's not a mystery, it's written in our Constitution. And that's why I pledge to you tonight that if you elect me to Congress, I will lead the charge with 3 simple words. Yes, impeach now. This president, when he's criticized by a newspaper, he has the federal government retaliate against its owner. Yes, repeat now. This president, he looks at the opioid crisis that's killing 40,000 Americans a year and puts his pollster in charge. Yes, impeach now. This president, he appoints as his national security advisor Michael Flynn, an unregistered foreign agent. Yes, impeach now. To Democrats that are sick of the debasement of our civil institutions, and to the independents out there who in your heart you know that what's in the White House is wrong, and to you patriotic Republicans who, yeah, maybe you didn't like Hillary, but you sure as hell never wanted to see her president praising neo-Nazis from the White House, join me. Go to www.yesimpeachnow.org and support my campaign. My name is Zach Emick, and I'm asking for your support and your energy and your prayers, and on June 26th, your vote. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Radhakrishna Mohan, and I've been living here for the last 27 years. I raised my family with my union salary. My sons went to school and they graduated. And I've been serving in Staten Island for a long time. I spent more than 2 decades of public and community service here. You talk about the union, I've spent more than 20 years in the union. I'm still a current board member of the union, of Public Employees Federation. I've introduced new things in the union. I introduced telecommuting. I fought for the women to get 4 more additional hours for their medical testing screening. And I'm also the chair of the New York State Workers' Comp Committee. And I work for the fight for the injured workers. I've been here for the last 27 years and doing the best I can. And I'm big on the quality of life issues here. That's why I joined the Police Council for the last 14 years. I did the Police Civilian Academy, and I've been there for to do the best for the community. And I'm also the community board member. I understand the issues of all the Staten Islanders here. I address the issues. I do the best I can for anybody who comes to me. And I'm part of the interfaith community here, and I did the community emergency response team, 3 months of training. We go and attend any emergencies, any that happens in Staten Island, we are there. We are the first people who will be there to do the best we can. My life has been service-oriented. All the time I've been doing the best service I can. In the office, I've been doing charities. I raised 60 to 160,000. I distribute this money to all the charities I can. And I'm also the first responder in the office, and I'm also the blood drive captain. I'm trying to do the best I can. I want to do the best. I want to make a difference in the community. I don't talk the talk, I walk the walk. Thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. My name is Max Rose. I'm a congressional candidate as well. You know, this has been a big month for me. Not only have I been honored to continue to be your congressional candidate amongst these other great gentlemen, but I also got married 3 weeks ago. You know, my wife Lee is living the dream. I quit my job to pursue my dreams of public service, so we should all give her a big congratulations. But you know, let me put the bottom line up front for you. Government has been ripping us off or ignoring us. They've ripped us off when they gave away $1 trillion to people that do not need it, to corporations that do not need it. They ignored us when they built a healthcare system where people can go bankrupt. And they have certainly ripped us off and ignored us as they've let nearly 100,000 people die from either overdoses or from gun violence. Now, many of you have heard my story. Many of you have heard how the only reason why I stand here today is because government saved my life by giving my vehicle in Afghanistan the armor it needed to protect itself against an IED attack. But you know what? I am sick and tired of government only solving problems when it comes to the military. I am sick and tired of government only solving problems when it comes to national security. It is damn time that we talk about rising inequality as a national security problem. It's damn time that we talk about gun violence and the opioid crisis as sincere and incredible matters of national security. So we're going to get into this conversation today. But I hope that you understand when you're looking at me, you look at someone committed to making the story of the 21st century, the story of the federal government overcoming problems again. Thank you so much again.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Paul Sperling. I am so proud to be the only born and raised Staten Islander in this race. And you know, being a born and raised Staten Islander, I understand what it's like to wake up in the morning prepared for a 2-hour commute and then have the bus pass you by or have the ferry doors slam in your face. Being a born and raised Staten Islander, I understand what it's like to send your child to an overcrowded public school where the teachers might not have the resources to make sure that every child can succeed. Being a born and raised Staten Islander, I've seen so many of us struggle to find a career here on the island. Not just a job, but a career that actually pays enough to raise a family here on the island. Being a born and raised Staten Islander, I've seen so many of my friends and neighbors suffer through rising healthcare costs and jobs where they have not seen a raise in decades. We need to take on the political corruption and finally get our community what we deserve. A subway connection to lower the commute. More schools and more teachers to get every child the individual attention that they need in the classroom. Bringing careers here to Staten Island, not just jobs, so that we can live sustainably right here in our borough. And passing Medicare for all, so every single American can see a doctor when they are sick and get the treatment that they need to get better. I am Paul Sperling, and I am proud to be running for these things for you. Thank you.
Hi guys, my name is Omar Baid, and I'm a union worker. I come from an immigrant family. My father was undocumented for a while, and he came from what used to be Burma and is now Myanmar. We know about the Rohingya. Well, 50 years ago, my family was expelled because of communism. And we found a home here, and we're a pretty typical immigrant story. In addition, my father, upon becoming a citizen, got a good union job in Michigan. So I'm second generation union. And I believe that right now there's an opportunity in this debate. There's a gentleman actually sitting in this audience. My first day of campaigning a year ago, he said to me as advice, he said, you know what? How are you going to get through to the far right wing that exists in this district? Because you're going to do fine with your base, kid, but how are you going to do with the other side? And I put that in my heart, and I traveled with it. And over the course of campaigning, I hired the co-founder of Women of Color for Progress as my campaign manager. We found a lot of success. We've had over 2,300 small donations, which I believe is the most on either side of the election, Democratic or GOP, and about $30 average, so real progressive, sort of fundraising there. And as we started exploring, what I learned is that 30% of this district is in fact union, and there's an opportunity here. I think the root of this debate, of this district, if you watch Grimm and Donovan tearing each other apart, it's about immigration. They're arguing over who's further on the right, who's going to fight harder to make sure New York is not a sanctuary city, and who's going to fight harder to deport people and to direct ICE. So I believe, because of my family, because of the family I come from, that if elected, I will use my office, our office, to defend immigrants and protect them from ICE, which is unconstitutional. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. The first question is for you, Mr. Vaid. I just want to say one thing to the audience. Some questions have multiple parts, but they're all equally substantive. Okay. All right, Mr. Vaid. As we all know, there is an opioid crisis on Staten Island and nationwide. How would you address this problem while still making sure that people who desperately need pain relief are able to get it?
So for me, like the opioid crisis, I watch Donovan and I watch what would be Grimm, and they attack fentanyl. And I feel like it's just one of the many pieces of the puzzle. I think that coming from a DA background, he's trying to, as Mike DeSillis, who is here, once said, arrest his way out of this problem, which I think is a bad idea. And I think that as a more holistic solution, you look at people that right here, all of us, 1 in 5 of us have a potential to become a victim of this opioid crisis if we were ever prescribed this kind of medicine. So it's not junkies, it's us, it's regular people, our friends and family. And access to physical therapy is so important, and it could be the difference between someone getting off pain medicine. And it's not available, and it needs to be. And I think we can do a better job of taking care of our own. And I believe there's research also in prescribing pain medicine and making sure we're not over-medicating. And then the prescription pill lobby, I can't say enough about being guilty of spilling pills all over our nation's streets and trying to get off the hook. And they have a hand in the crisis too, because they've tried to make money off it and they've bribed their way into doing so. And these are the things I'd like to fight if elected.
Thank you. If any of you gentlemen would like to add in, I'm going to just walk this way, then that way.
I'm sure we all want to.
Mr. Sperling?
Yes. So we have to bring responsibility back into the conversation around prescription drugs. Pharmaceutical companies were irresponsible for a long time in pushing the prescription drugs onto our community that have now led to the heroin epidemic. So we have to make sure that we prosecute any pharmaceutical executives that knowingly push these pills onto our community and made our community addicted to drugs. Thank you.
You know, amidst all the focus on prescription drugs, we have got to focus on education and treatment as well. There are not nearly enough clinics on Staten Island providing medically assisted treatment. And the laws prevent nurse practitioners from prescribing that treatment. This is to say nothing of the fact that we don't have nearly enough inpatient beds. We don't have a public hospital right here on Staten Island. So we need this significant investment that needs to be on par with what we did during the HIV crisis when they passed the Ryan-White Act. Okay? If we do not put $25 billion towards this, we are not doing enough. And all we see from our elected officials today is rhetoric. No, they have got to put their money where their mouth is rather than giving away $1 trillion. We just read yesterday, $19 billion that the top six banks will get in additional revenue as a result of this tax bill. $19 billion. For that, we could have provided over 200,000 Americans with the substance abuse treatment that they so desperately need. We've got to reanalyze, reorient our priorities in this country.
I think there are many moving parts for the opioid. There's no silver bullet to address that issue. But like Max was talking about, yes, treatment is important because right now we don't have enough beds or enough treatment facilities in Staten Island. In the police council, when a lot of people come on that, they always come out with these opioid issues. They always talk about it. And treatment is important. Educating these young kids is important. And also to cut the supply of opioids in our community. That is also happening simultaneously. And the most important thing is to go after those who supplies this, who is the instrumental in supplying this opioids in the hands of the young kids. And there is a new, NYPD is following a new rule now. They can ask whoever is affected, whoever is a victim of this opioid, they can go after them, and then they can ask and get the information where they got it, who supplied this, and then they can go after them and get them out of this supply machine. So all this has to be done. And then we need to get additional funds, which I'm going to fight for. I'm a labor union guy. We know how to get things done. That's what I will do. Thank you.
So, you know, we're so hard in America on the small-time drug user. If the cops pull you over and you have some joints in your car, they can seize your car's property and you have a long road ahead to get it back. But if a company like McKesson Corporation, which is one of the largest pharmaceutical distributors in America, $2 billion of profit last year, if they're caught distributing opioids without proper controls, they're fined $8 million in 2008. And they're fined again in 2016, $100 million. And it goes on. And maybe it goes on because the Republican tax bill that was passed 3 months ago probably cut their taxes $150 million and cut their CEO's taxes, he takes home $20 million a year for selling addictive chemicals. Probably cut his taxes a few hundred grand. So my answer is very simple when it comes to the pharmaceutical-driven opioid problem. Handcuffs, not fines. Thank you.
So I'm just noticing that New York 1 is here, and I just want to say very directly to anybody that is listening from Charter Spectrum, give the Local 3 union a fair contract. It comes down to education and figuring out alternative methods. As far as education goes, we need to make sure that our community is educated, using craft training so that they know what to do with pills. We need to make sure that the individual is educated when in fact they are prescribed medication. And as far as alternative measures, as your representative, I will co-sponsor HR 1227 to decriminalize and deschedule marijuana so that it could be used in a meaningful way as an alternative to opioids. Thank you.
All right, as I am now of a certain age, I know firsthand that Medicare benefits are being cut back. Mr. Rose, this question is for you. How would you make sure that all Americans have quality and affordable health care, and how would you pay for it?
Sure. Thank you for the question. So I think that we need to do 4 things principally in this country. And if we do this, we're not going to have to tell people that we're taking away your health care. Number 1 is we need a public option in every single district in America. Because you should never have any healthcare system ever having to compete against nobody. Number 2, we need a system of all-payer rate setting in this country, as they have in Maryland, and as California will soon develop. Because let me tell you something about the healthcare system that we have today, because I'm coming from it. It is ridden with excessive waste, excessive profit, and excessive cost and perverse incentives, and those need to be eliminated not just by negotiating the cost of all healthcare services, not just by negotiating the cost of pharmacy drugs, but by setting global budgets for hospitals. Number 2, health insurance companies today are getting rich on our backs. We need to establish essential benefits and mandate that every single health insurance company provides those on a non-profit basis. Now, if we do, lastly, there are people who are getting ripped off on the exchange right now because they're over the 400% threshold. They're getting ripped off. We need to expand Obamacare subsidies so that they are getting the support they absolutely need. Now you may ask, well, Max, you could just say Medicare for all, as I know some people on this stage will. That would be easy for me to say and we could just walk away. The truth of the matter is that I am not ready to put this entire system through radical transformation when we could establish universal health care coverage in this country in a far less radical way, just like Germany does, just like Switzerland does, just like France does, which is really expanded Obamacare. We can do that in this country too, without me having to look at every single union member on Staten Island and in Southern Brooklyn, the union members that you mentioned, Omar, and tell them your health care is no more. Without me having to look at the 500,000 people that are employed by health insurance companies in this country and telling them, you're unemployed now. We can accomplish this without doing that, and that's my plan to do so. Thank you again. You all get a chance.
I want a chance.
You're going to get your chance, but this time
Okay.
we're starting at this end, and we're just turns. So if you wish to make a comment, you each have a minute.
It is Medicare for all, period. We cannot afford not to. The only time that we should be competing is in running races in baseball. We do not need to compete in Medicare. Privatize nothing. This will only, in the long run, turn into another top-down issue that we're going to be battling. $500 billion we will save in the first year if we go to a Medicare for all system. It is gradual. The reality of turning a system on its end, it would be the first opportunity for us to show ourselves the way we need to be showing ourselves, which is to figure out ways to retrain people. Why are we afraid of that? It's what we need to do for all Americans to make sure that if something is being phased out, that we retrain them. We cannot afford to keep going on like this. It is Medicare for all, 4-year phase-in. Thank you.
You know, as an engineer, I always like to step back and look at the big picture problem with our healthcare. And to me, it's two things. One, the fact that there's still roughly 9% of the population that doesn't have health insurance. And secondly, the costs that keep going up. To me, Medicare for all is taking those two very focused problems and slapping a massive government bureaucracy on it. And I'll be honest with you, I don't believe that our government can handle the central planning that it would take to do that. I just don't believe it. But how do we address those problems? Well, I believe in single platform healthcare, which is a single healthcare card that feeds into your payer. Because really, in the end, when you go to the hospital, you don't really care which insurance is actually paying for it, as long as you have insurance. So that's a single platform which ties into a public option. And then in terms of bringing the costs down, one, we got to block pharmaceutical companies from all the shenanigans they play to prevent generic prescription drugs from coming to the market. And two, we got to enable Medicare and Medicaid to negotiate for lower pharmaceutical prices. So let's address the problem at hand with smart, focused tools and not one giant central solution. That's my plan.
I'm a union guy. This is what we do day in and day out. This is what we do all the time. Whenever we go into the contract, this is what they want us from us. They always want us to give back what kind of concession you're going to make in your health insurance. This is how the contract goes. That is a nightmare for us every time. But we are the biggest watchdogs. If anybody wants to bring any changes, only the union guys can do that. Only the unions can bring in the change. Nobody goes on champions this, or we do that on the street, on the trenches, we do it all the time. And there is a bill in Congress now, I believe it's HR 696, 696, I believe, I'm not sure about it, but that bill addresses Medicare to give all the benefits of health care, and that can be implemented only in the government hospitals and But it will not allow, people doesn't have to pay for it, but the health insurance companies can ask for other what is not very health-related items. They can charge for it. But what I'm saying is, as a union guy, this is what we do all the time. this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the root cause of this problem. The root cause is the lobbyists and the special interests. As a union guy, we are going to address that. We are going to, my watchdog will be that. Thank you.
So, America is the richest and wealthiest country in the history of the world. And that means we should be guaranteeing health care as a right for every single one of our citizens. We should be able to see a doctor when we are sick and get the best treatment available. Now, I know my opponent thinks that nonprofit is the way to go. Now, we have a nonprofit healthcare provider here on Staten Island in Northwell. The CEO makes $10 million a year while his nurses are understaffed. So that's not the way to go. They could still keep drug prices high, they could still control the system and still reap massive profits off of our sicknesses. We need to take the CEOs out of the equation, reduce healthcare costs, and guarantee every single American the right to see a doctor when they are sick and get the best treatment that we have available.
So Max referred to Medicare for All as a radical idea, and he brought up unions. I believe health care is a fundamental human right. And as a union worker, I've talked to union leaders, and if there's union people here or union leaders here, when you have the discussion about a union contract that comes up every 3 years, talk to nurses, NISNA, talk to 1199. Nurses know more about this than anybody. And what you find out is that the escalating cost of health care, every year, 300%, 500%. That's why union workers can't get wage increases. That's why they can't get pension and welfare increases. It all goes to health care every year. And every union leader you talk to will tell you the same thing, which is that, yes, as a union worker, you don't see a bill, but we fight hard to keep your deductible down. But you don't see the bill, it's 15% of your wages. If you make $100,000, it's $15,000. Medicare for All is closer to 5%. $5,000 out of the employer's pocket and 1% out of the employee's pocket. And it's the right thing to do. And if God forbid, United Auto Workers in Canada and America, if there's a factory coming in, if Toyota's bringing a factory between Canada and Michigan, the cost of healthcare will sway to Canada. It makes sense, and it's doable. And don't let anyone tell you it's not.
Okay, I'm going to, since this seems to be a heated issue, if you have anything else you want to say, but I'm going to ask, and I don't have a card that says 15 seconds, so if you want to try to count in your head and speak at the same time, if you have something you want to add in, go right ahead. 15 seconds.
15 seconds. So there were a few points made against what I said. Let me put this very simply. I am talking about dramatically reducing the cost of healthcare in this country with a system where we can negotiate down the price of everything that happens. Because you know what will happen in Medicare for All, where they are promising zero copayments, $0 copayments, is hospital systems will jack up the number of services they provide. And our overall costs will skyrocket. So we need to control cost in this country. And I am the only one on the stage that presented a plan to do that.
We took, but you can have the mic next, but 15 seconds.
Yeah, I think the plan is, a lot of it is Medicare and Medicaid, which are huge buyers of pharmaceuticals and services, giving them the power to negotiate with the companies and push back. It's about leverage in that sense.
Sure.
Secondly, passing a law, you have these pharmaceuticals that have the patent on a new drug, and when it expires and other companies want to come in with generics, they deny samples so they can't make the generics. Those are two laws right now that'll help bring the cost of medication and healthcare down.
Mr. Sperling?
What's keeping drug costs so high right now are executives in the boardroom colluding on prices, colluding to keep wages down, and colluding to make sure that, and deny care to people who can't afford it so that they can keep costs high. That is what's keeping healthcare costs high. We need to cut out the executives.
And again, none of this happens without big money out of politics, just to say as much. We're seeing right now in New York State a privatization of Medicaid. It's happening quietly, and there are nonprofits involved. And it is not going well. It is not going well. The plan that Max Rose is presenting is not the plan. You're not the only one that presented something. Senator Sanders presented just a fine bill. We just got to get down there and do something with it.
We could do this all night.
Okay. You know, I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. There's no point, we can sit here all day long, we can talk about health insurance, what we are going to do about it. But the best thing I'm going to do is to go after those lobbies and the special interests. This is the guys who's jacking up all these prices. That's how your prescription drug, everything is going up because of this special interest and the lobbies. And we are good at that. As a union guy, I have the network of union supporters. We will be at them, we'll be a watchdog, we'll keep fire to their feet. That's how we can do this. Thank you.
I give my answer. I'm good.
Okay, fine, thank you. All right, this is a somewhat long question, but the time limits still pertain. Okay, Mr. DeVito. What do you consider to be the most vital infrastructure needs of the country? How would they be paid for? How would they affect the transportation situation on Staten Island and in Brooklyn? While many transportation issues are state issues, in addressing this question, please recognize that Staten Island has no subways, and the R train, which is the lifeline to Bay Ridge, has been referred to as an everlasting nightmare.
In 2 minutes or less. Okay, so if they'll have me, the Progressive Caucus has presented $2 trillion in investment, $500 billion in green investment. So there are several things that are going on. The entire country is crumbling. We have water problems, we have road problems, we have bridge problems. Here in Staten Island and in South Brooklyn, we have a serious transportation problem. We can't get anywhere. What we need, though, is we need shovel-ready projects. And we don't have any of those right now. So we have to meaningfully look for the types of shovel projects that we can get going immediately. I would like to see at least one Staten Island Railway started within the next decade. I would like to see us finally address the R-Train issues, hopefully by getting some new R-Train cars, some gangway cars, so that we can get along more quickly. There are so many things happening in this issue, and you asked how I would pay for it. Quite simply, we have to repeal the tax scam. We have to make sure that millionaires and billionaires pay their fair share. Let's hit the reboot and go back to Reagan, when the rich people were paying 40%. I'm ready for that. Thank you.
It's funny, no one ever asks, how are we going to pay for this war? Or how are we going to pay for these bases in like half of the African countries now we have bases. You know, infrastructure is a huge topic, and it's tough to summarize in 2 minutes. But I'd like to focus specifically on, in 1 minute, it's even tougher. So I'll focus on the district, really. The infrastructure that we could use here, and New York City is the beating heart of America's economy, so we deserve the infrastructure dollars. Things we can do for the district. One, every highway in Staten Island and going on into Brooklyn should be double-decker highways. I saw in the news the other day we're getting double-decker buses. Well, how about double-decker highways? That makes travel flow much more efficient. Two, ferry boats. Right now we have one ferry line that goes between the top of Staten Island to the southern tip of Manhattan. That's a waste of our waterways. We should have ferry boats going from Staten Island to Brooklyn to Queens to Midtown to New Jersey to Queens and back and forth. And third, definitely we need a train line coming from Brooklyn back over here to Staten Island. And I'm going to work in Congress to get the dollars here to make it happen. Thank you.
To take care of the infrastructure is going to take a lot of money. No, we have to allocate some budget on that. And other day we were talking on the Peace Action Committee meeting to reduce the defense budget. By reducing defense budget, you will have substantial amount of money that we can invest in the infrastructure. And that is one, I'm not saying reduce it means reduce it to an extent that our military will be in a disadvantage. It should be on an optimum level. We should reduce it in a level that we keep all the army in a good standing. That's one thing. But that will help get some funds from the defense, so by reducing the budget, we can get that money, put it back into the infrastructure. And the other way of, as far as the Bay Ridge R train is concerned, there's a bill in the assembly, in the state legislature, and about the modernizing transportation, and which they're not doing. It is sitting there for the last couple of years, and that is one thing we need to address. All these signal system or everything is being outdated now. So that's one way of getting this bill passed, get the money into this transportation, and then get this, get this issue resolved. Thank you.
Let's talk about how we're going to pay this. One, capital gains rate needs to be increased for the wealthy in this country up to what they pay on income. I am sick and tired of a hedge fund manager paying a lower rate than the cops and the firemen and the teachers and the first responders in this district. But number two, we cannot be afraid to invest in our country. Infrastructure will pay for itself in part. The dramatically increased economic growth and the tax revenue that comes with that will be incredible. Folks, if we don't invest in infrastructure and human capital in this country, we have no chance of being the economic powerhouse that we were in the 20th century, in the 21st century, but it's got to be done in an equitable manner. All of these jobs need to be union jobs. And we cannot just put people back to work on our roads and our bridges. I'm talking about cybersecurity and smart grid and 21st century energy systems. So we can push skilled workers into the private sector as well. We got 6 million jobs that cannot be filled today. We don't have the skilled laborers to do so. An infrastructure bill, a generation-long infrastructure bill that's on par with the Interstate Highway Act so many years ago will do just that.
I don't really got to tell anybody that we have one of the longest commutes in the whole country here in our community. We feel it every single day. And there's a $1.5 trillion infrastructure bill that is going to be before the Congress very soon. If you send me to Congress, I will bring $10 billion of that $1.5 trillion home here to Staten Island, cut down our commute by building a subway connection with the rest of the subway system, and finally bring Staten Island into the fold with public transportation, and build a comprehensive railway system covering the entire island. We've looked at the studies, we've looked at how it's been done in other cities. $10 billion, we could get it done. We have the longest commute in the country. It's been going on for a long time. It's about time we cut it down.
I think we should start calling infrastructure again what we used to back in the 50s when we did great things, which is we called it public works. And I can't allow BlackRock, hedge funds like that, or Saudi Arabia, foreign governments to own our public works. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it'll work. I think it's been proven many times to fail. The most pressing, in my opinion, infrastructure or public works project, so trained to say it, is the Gateway Tunnel. And it's interesting, it's not even one that's actually right here in Staten Island and Brooklyn. But the Gateway Tunnel between New Jersey and New York is 106 years old. It could fail any day. We were promised 50-50 funding from the previous administration, and we're not getting it. We don't want a border wall. We want that Gateway Tunnel and many more like it. And it could collapse any day. It's like, it could be like a humanitarian disaster. And it could be like the worst traffic ever going over the Verrazano. So it's like something so pressing for this community.
Okay, Mr. Emick, this is your question. I've heard all my life that a district attorney can indict a ham sandwich. Yet, when Representative Donovan was district attorney, he did not get a grand jury indictment in the Eric Garner matter. Why not? And should federal charges be brought against the police officer?
Well, to answer the second part first, yes. And to get to why not, like, unfortunately, New York hasn't released the transcripts from the court trial, so we don't know exactly why not. You know, Eric Garner was a man, like all of us up here. And, you know, when I think about what happened to him, I think about it as a father, because as he lay there in his last moments, I'm sure his thoughts went to his family. like it would for any of us. And as his name is used as sort of a debating point, we should always remember that he's a person like us that lost his life. The person who killed him is a man also, and he's a cop. And we trust our cops to protect and to keep our communities safe, and it's a tough job. But because we give them a lot of power, we need to hold them account when they cross the line so egregiously, like what happened there. And I live right around the corner from there. What happened a block from my home. There should be a trial for the crime for the homicide that was committed on that day. And I think we should be comfortable as a country to talk about the racism that was being practiced then. Because to me, racism is the combination of power with fear or anger. You know, like I, as a white man, have power, social power in our culture. But luckily I'm not afraid, not angry, so generally I try to behave my best. At that moment, at that intersection, the police had the ultimate power, and through fear and anger, he took another man's life in a completely unjustified way. And I think that deserves a trial of his peers, and it deserves justice. Thank you.
I had the pleasure of knowing Erica Garner, may she rest in power, before she passed away. And I made her a personal promise that I'll never forget, which is to continue to fight, if elected, to demand a Department of Justice civil rights case continue to be open for Eric Garner. And to remember Eric and his life and fight in the direction of there never being this type of brutality ever again. And she told personal stories of police officers shoving papers under her door just so they knew, just so she would know that they're watching her. And other stories of politicians closing the door, slamming the door at her family. And I made it very clear that this is a politician who would never, ever, ever close the door on her family or the issue of Black Lives Matter or the issue of police brutality, ever.
Eric Gardner's last words started a movement all across this country as millions of people stood up and said, "I can't breathe," because they felt strangled by injustice in this country. And we have to heal those wounds of injustice here on Staten Island and all across America. And one step in healing those wounds of injustice is transparency. We all have to understand the facts. And so, as your representative in Congress, I will fight to unseal the grand jury records so we know exactly what went on in that courtroom when Daniel Pantaleo was in front of the grand jury. Because almost any other time, a prosecutor is going to have a very easy time getting an indictment from a grand jury. And we need to find out exactly why Eric Gardner's murderer was not indicted in that grand jury.
Jeff Sessions should immediately take the recommendation of the Civil Rights Bureau. Immediately. And in the legacy and the name of Amadou Diallo and Akai Gurley and so many others that were unnecessarily killed by police officers in this city and cities throughout the country, we need to institute federal funding for police training throughout the nation so that they are trained to the same level that I saw my soldiers trained in Afghanistan. Soldiers like 19-year-old Anthony Ortiz, who resisted shooting on ununiformed Afghan police officers who held machine guns. That type of courageous restraint we need to see from our police officers, and they deserve the training to do so. And one day that will happen in this country, and we will take one step closer to mending the deep wounds of implicit racial bias in this country, as well as, much more important than that, the deep racial divisions that we need to heal.
I think my heart goes out to Eric Garner and his family, and now his daughter has been passed. But the thing is, this became a police exercise. That's what happened. Though he was not able to breathe, still the police, the officer kept on applying the pressure and he lost his life. This needs training. This needs a big training, big understanding. That's what needs to happen. And now police started learning from this bad experience, what has happened. And now they're introducing NCOs in the communities, neighborhood coordinating officers. They're mingling with all the community members and learning person to person. They know very well. And that kind of understanding has to be established. That's what happened. That was didn't happen during the Eric Garner's those interactions. The police didn't know who he is.
He was disciplined many times. Many times.
Right, but the thing is, there is not proper understanding there, lack of understanding. If the understanding is there, he shouldn't have gone this far. He lost his life. And also lack of transparency by the district attorney. He did not release why, what happened, and people would know. We would be answering, nobody knows what happened. And no, that's what we have to do, make the DA's office more transparent and put in rules and regulations that addresses this issue. Thank you.
We all want justice. What if it was your child? What if it was your kid? What if it was your dad? As your congressman, I will fight to amend the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2005. What I would do with that act is I would encourage there to be funding for community oversight. We have to accept the fact that the police and the DA, they work together. And we need to have oversight to ensure that our community can be involved and our community can say when they see something that needs to be addressed, so that true transparency and true accountability can be held by the people.
Thank you.
Yeah, really. They're very disruptive.
Hey guys, we need the press. Come on.
We do, but they're disruptive. Yeah.
It's the one time you're not interviewing Grim. Finally came.
Okay, this question is for Mr. Sperling. To quote the essence, but not the exact words recently spoken by the mayor of New Orleans, not everyone in this country should be able to buy any gun they want and take it anywhere they want. Would you go any further than this in addressing the problems of guns in this country? And if so, what do you propose? Also, conversely speaking, could that statement actually be a statement from which gun regulation could emanate?
And that's, that's a statement, and that's mostly rhetorical, that statement. We've had a lot of rhetoric around guns from the left and from the right in this country for decades. The time of rhetoric is over. We need real solutions now in America. So what I'm proposing is a real solution and an attainable solution. The shooter from Florida had 39 interactions with the police. And those are because of violent altercations with his neighbors, violent altercations with the family that he was staying with. He was known to the police to be a violent person. There should have been a system, and I am proposing a system in which murderers and potential murderers like the one in Florida who are known to be violent individuals can be flagged by the police and can be prevented from buying a gun. When they go into that gun store, a notification will come up, they are a violent individual. And they will have to go through an extensive process where they are shown, where they have to sit with a therapist, and they are shown to be of good, sane, healthy mind before they have that ability to buy a gun. The shooter and murderer from Florida was known to police 39 times, as I said. He should not have ever had that ability to buy a gun.
It is not your right to be able to walk into a Waffle House with an AR-15. It's not your right as an American, and it shouldn't be. And the way the NRA behaves, the behavior they defend, they might as well be referred to as a terrorist organization. Because look at what they defend. Think carefully. They don't defend the Constitution. And they don't defend people in the South where in a barn a gun is as common as a hammer and just like a standard thing you keep in the household. It's not the same thing. We need a full ban of assault rifles. We need universal background checks, universal mental health checks. We need what we have here in New York City, in New York State, to be national. That's what we need to fight for. That's the direction we need to go into.
I carried an assault weapon in combat. It has no place in this country. It should never, ever, ever be sold again. But we cannot just stop there. We need to limit magazine capacity to 10 rounds for every single weapon so you cannot just turn a handgun into an assault weapon. We need universal background checks. I don't care if it's a secondhand sale, an internet sale, a gun fair. Someone with a criminal background or mental health issues should never be able to buy a weapon in this country under any circumstances whatsoever. Over 90% of the weapons recovered in gun crimes in New York City today are recovered from down south. Folks, this is not just about keeping our schools safe. It's not just about keeping our communities safe. It's about keeping cops safe too. 19 states have done an assault weapons ban. Cop deaths have gone down by 50%. We need federal action on this, and what we do not need anymore is feckless and cowardly politicians in Washington, D.C. who will listen more to the NRA than our own children, our own teenagers that are trying to lead them.
My friend Max was, at least you carried an assault weapon. I never touched a gun in my life, okay? So we don't need the gun. So nobody needs the gun. Why we need a gun, right? We live in such a peaceful community. There's no need for the guns. But the people who are doing this as NRA, they're putting so much guns in the community and they're selling it so hard that they don't care about the innocent victims that are dying each and every day. And what we should do, we should have them answerable in the Congress. This is what I've been talking about. We need to go after the lobbyists and the special interests. Who is supporting this? Which legislator is supporting this? Which congressman is supporting it? We are the people who can go after them. The unions spread all over US. We can see who is doing this. We can put fire to their feet. That's how we are going to get it under control. Now, I went to March for Our Lives in Washington. I spent the whole day. It's an historic moment. These are the students who's going to bring in the changes. I firmly believe there's going to be a change. The students are going to be at it. The union is going to support them, and the community is going to support them. With all this help, we are going to do that. It's not many days away. I can assure you that.
If a young man goes into a bar and orders a shot of vodka, that's a perfectly legal transaction. If the bartender serves him 40 shots of vodka in a row, and he goes into his car and gets in a DUI crash and kills people, that bartender can be sued, right? Even though each transaction was legal, but the cumulative effect damaged the community. Now, actually most gun crimes in America are just one-off killings in the cities and gang disputes. And where they get the guns is from straw buyers who go to gun shops, like Chicago killings. The guns come from Indiana, right across the border, with a straw man going to a gun shop and buying 40 pistols in one go. And the gun shop owner knows what's up. Now, why don't we sue those people? Well, I'll tell you why. In 2005, the Republican Congress passed a bill called PLCAA, which gave the gun manufacturers and distributors in America legal immunity. The only industry to have it, legal immunity. So one step to the solution, and there are many others, but one is when we get to Congress and Democrats take over to repeal the PLCAA.
Raise your hand if you know someone who was affected or if you yourself were affected by gun violence. I bet you if we raised our hands about how many people were in a car accident, it would probably be more. More people affected or know somebody that have been affected by gun violence. How about violence? Because what we're talking about here goes past gun violence. It is also about violence in our communities. Now I am proud to say that I helped lead the charge to ensure that the Blue Dog Democrats gave back the NRA money for the last 2 years, because then we can all be united here as Democrats and say that we want reform. And I am also every day fighting to ensure that my young people have the restorative practices that they need in order to ensure that they can mitigate their own conflict and that they can treat each other well. So this is a much larger conversation that we need to have, and we need to have it now.
My last question is for Mr. Mohan. We have gotten many audience questions, which I will then turn to immediately after that. But I'm going to say right now to all of you gentlemen that in an effort to get to as many of the audience questions and to leave here before midnight, it would be great if you could limit to the audience questions your answers to 30 seconds each, because we have over 20 questions. Mr. Mohan, this question is for you. I realize that Sandy may have faded in some people's memories, but do you think environmental challenges are a continuing problem for the country and in particular for Staten Island? If so, what do you suggest be done to ameliorate future difficulties? And in a similar vein, what do you think about the Williams Pipeline? Now, I realize that the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation has recently denied a profit, but I've been here long enough to know that bad ideas never die.
Thank you. That's a very good question. The natural calamities happens all the time, but how we are going to save our communities from getting affected by that? Sandy is a big lesson for all of us. We thought we are not going to get affected by that, and it did affect us. 26 people died, and the best way to do that is to, now learning from this lesson, we need to protect the coastal areas, and you don't have to construct buildings just to stop the water. You're not going to do that. But build something in such a way, make an arcade, make something look very nice. At the same time, it should be a natural barricade for the waves to come in if there is a high-rise waves comes through these storms. But again, our current president is withdrawing U.S. from this climatic control agreement. The France, who came here, Emmanuel Macron, he was talking about it. He is asking, almost pleading, the President Trump to get into the climate control. You have to agree and be a part of that. But U.S. is the leader of the world, and we should be setting this example. And by withdrawing from the climate control, when all the other countries are agreeing, we are creating there's a big damage for the U.S. So we need to get into the climate control and do the best. These are the things that should be in place to avoid all these natural calamities. And as I said, when this happens, I did the, as I said, community emergency response team. I'm also be prepared for this. Don't ignore this. A lot of people ignored, and then they got affected. And again, about the pipeline, I didn't deal much depth on that. I don't want to say anything on that, but I'm dead against that. That I can say. Thank you.
I am a man of action, for those of you who know me. For those of you who don't, I am a man of action. I have made a pledge to get the United States of America off of fossil fuels by 2035, HR 3671. That is my pledge. Again, if the Progressive Caucus will have me, I believe that we need to invest in the very near future $500 billion to address our smart grid issues, to get us off of fossil fuels, to deal with our water issues, and by the way, let's stop privatizing it, and also to amend current actions like Clean and Water Air Act to ensure that we give the EPA the right type of direction so that they can enforce the law. We have to keep it simple. Thank you.
Let's take a moment also to really make fun of Washington, D.C. Republicans on the issue of climate change. You know, how many times have you heard them say, like, well, I'm not a scientist, so, You know, like, I'm not a doctor, but when I go sick, I don't just throw up my hands. I talk to the experts. Climate change is going to affect all of us and all of our children and their children's children. And I think it doesn't help any of us to sort of be panicked. It helps us to get prepared. So what that means in terms of Staten Island in America is trying to bend the curve of the climate change to avoid the worst catastrophes. That's why a carbon tax, to start putting the cost to our climate into the pocketbook of America's carbon producing companies, is part of my plan. And then in terms of living through climate change, that means reassessing what floodplains are in America. So we're not relying on 1950s standards, and having infrastructure that can adjust to the different shorelines. I mean, this is a huge issue, and my time's up, but I think we really, this should have its own debate at some point, what we're doing to our Earth. Thank you.
Plain and simple, global warming is a national security threat today. And we need to be all hands on deck to counter this threat in the same way that we would if we were attacked. We need an Apollo project for battery technology in this country. If we don't do that, we will never be able to fully transition to alternative energy. We'll never be able to accomplish it. In addition, though, when we flip this seat and we flip the House, we can finally say to this administration that you will no longer use the EPA as an agent of the coal industry. You will no longer use the EPA as an agent of the fossil fuel industry. That ends with this election. But lastly, I think we also have to come to terms with the fact that because of the absence of courage the politicians have passed, sea level rise will occur. And we have got to invest in resiliency projects because we cannot allow for another Sandy to occur. We cannot allow for one more person to die at the hands of global warming and sea level rise. Thank you.
What happened in our community during Hurricane Sandy is the epitome of Staten Island being the forgotten borough. We had more death on Staten Island during Hurricane Sandy than any other borough. And that's because Staten Island has been left out of the fold when it comes to bringing sewer access, when it comes to bringing drainage and dams and basic quality of life things that every community deserves. Now there are candidates on this stage like Max and like Omar. They weren't even living on Staten Island when Sandy happened. If you haven't been living on Staten Island that long, I don't know if you're qualified to be in this race, but we don't just get flooded during hurricanes. We get flooded during simple rainstorms. Amboy Road in Bay Terrace, Harlem Boulevard by the McDonald's in Newdorp. Just in a bad rainstorm, we get terrible flooding here on Staten Island. So we need to make sure that Staten Island's infrastructure is prepared not just for tomorrow, but for decades from now as these storms continue to get worse.
Respond to the comment, and then Mr. Rose will also respond to the comment.
Yeah.
But you can do the question and the comment.
I happen to grow up in Jupiter, Florida, Palm Beach County, and we know a little bit about hurricanes because we get hit with them all the time, and we know what Andrew can do, and we know what Sandy is, and we know what happened in Houston because we're all connected. We're all one family, we're all one flag, we're all one America. And so together, we help each other.
I'm sorry I wasn't here. I was training to get ready to go to Afghanistan. This is
No. Okay, well, I thank you for answering my questions.
But I didn't get to actually answer the question. Real quick, I'll keep it
30
quick.
seconds.
All right, so no border wall, we need a seawall right here in Staten Island. There was a season of opportunity after Sandy where Michael Grimm, I rarely give him credit for anything, ever. But he was the first GOP congressman to come out against climate change. Where did it go? you know? And so there's that season of opportunity that we can't forget after a storm. And to me, we got to really look at like NASA, the space science, like the climate science missions are all being cut. The US Army Corps of Engineers is being cut. FEMA is being cut. So we need to fight for all these things to come back. And there's no one that'll fight harder than me, a guy from Florida.
Thank you, gentlemen, for answering my questions. Now we're going to be doing audience questions. I'm actually going to read two questions because they're fairly similar, okay? So don't answer till I get to read both of them. And then again, we're going to go this way and then this way. Okay, what can you do to make sure the Democratic candidate is more visible? Past candidates have been unable to make their presence and positions known to the public. Now, the similar question. Do you see moderate Republicans or swing voters as potential Democratic voters? If so, how will you appeal to them?
I have been committed to this community for 13 years. That is 13 years of working with young people and their families. That is 13 years of helping people find a better life. How am I visible? I'm already visible. I've been visible for 13 years, helping Democrats and Republicans, because this was never about asking them whether or not they had a party that they were affiliated with. It was whether or not they needed my help. Relationships, they happen at the speed of trust, folks. I am bringing a freight train of trust with me. The young people that I have served, as they register to vote, these are the ones that we've been waiting for. Those parents that I helped that feel as though Trump should be their president, they know that Michael should be their congressman. It is about being connected, and I am. Thank you.
15 seconds is what you said?
No, 30.
30 seconds.
Sorry,
You went over 30.
I think it's an important question because Democrats have lost this seat 8 out of the last 9 times. And I'm trying to present a different type of Democrat. You know, I've not been a staffer to any politician. I'm a businessman. I'm a Christian. I talk about things directly. And I think, as I mentioned in my opening, this next Congress is going to have probably one of the most important votes that our country has seen, and that's the impeachment of this president. And it's not because of outrage or hate or tweets or whatever. It's because he has violated his oath of office repeatedly in our faces. And that is a high crime, and it's Congress's job to deal with it. Not Mueller's or a lawsuit, whatever. It's our job. And that's the message I'll take to Republicans, Independents, Democrats, North Shore, South Shore, and Brooklyn. Thank you.
Well, I've been visible all the time here. I've been here for the last 27 years. I'm involved in every sphere of activities that is going on in Staten Island. Be it the quality of life issues with the police for more than 14 years, the union for more than 20 years, with the community board for over 3 years, and then I've been interfaith, I'm part of the interfaith building bridges for the last more than 10 years. And I also conduct the youth activities, youth sports every Saturday I do the training for them. I'm into each and everything. People know me by my service. Service is my forte. That's what I do all the time. That's how people know me. And I'm a grassroots worker here. I'm a community worker, grassroots, do the best for the community and make a big difference here. That's what I will do here. I will do that in Washington, which we have been doing it now. As a union member, I've been doing that. This is exactly what we do. We'll do the best for the Staten Island that Staten Island has ever seen. Thank you.
Plain and simple, I think that we have to earn voters' trust again, and then we have to re-inspire in them a belief that the federal government can actually get something done. For a generation now, the political class has failed us. If we approach voters in Staten Island or Southern Brooklyn and we say the Democratic Party is perfect, they'll look at you and they say, well, what about the carrot interest loophole that Democrats have propped up just alongside Republicans? What about a series of corporate tax loopholes that Democrats have done the same? This election is about turning a page in this country, and it is about checking this administration. If we can convince them of those two things, we will win by an incredibly wide margin.
I know a lot of people look at Staten Island like a Republican borough, like we're some lost hope. Staten Island's not a Republican borough. Staten Island is a working class borough. We need policies that are going to work for working people. We need to bring careers here to our community so we could all live with a good quality of life. We need to pass Medicare for all so every single person can see a doctor when they are sick and get the treatment that we have available. We need to make sure everyone can get to work on time by finally bringing a subway connection here to Staten Island. We will win this seat if we have policies that work for working class people, and that is what I represent.
So I think, just to rephrase the question, exposure, getting caught in the media too, because as we've seen in this district, Michael Grimm parks in a handicap spot, and it's like national news. You know? And then I'll say something like, while I'm fighting to save disabled people's Medicaid, he's taking their parking. You know, like, you know, they try to make it funny and try to make it humorous. God forbid you have a sense of humor. And also, for me, I used to tell building tradespeople, I will help you unionize a job site personally. I'll come over there, roll up my sleeves, and I'll help you blow up the rat. And they took me up on it. And I got invited in Midtown to help the building trades. And there I was, and there was the press. And I'm just a candidate. So if elected, then it won't just be like a tiny segment of the press. It'll be bigger news. And I think sometimes just lending yourself and creating a little controversy, but maybe in a positive way.
Okay, the next question is a single question. Dan Donovan said in his original campaign that he would not vote to take away a woman's right to choose. Yet his first vote in Congress was to ban abortion access at 20 weeks. Will you work to make sure that access to abortion care is protected and covered? If so, how will you do that? We'll start this time.
First of all, to thank local activist groups, Staten Island Women at March, Bay Ridge Fights Back, for dispatching the handmaidens in his face when he did it, when he lied. So, he's voted against equal pay for women, to defund Planned Parenthood, against you know, a woman's right to choose multiple times. And I think right now, protecting Roe v. Wade is such an important thing. We have to stay vigilant, because they're working on it behind closed doors to pick away at it. And they're looking for creative and weird and strange ways to do it across the country. So we're going to fight back with everything we have.
I am absolutely committed to every woman's right to choose. And we are blessed that it is codified by the Supreme Court. And I will fight in Congress to oppose any of Trump's representatives to the Supreme Court who would threaten Roe v. Wade.
I'm absolutely uncompromising on this issue. I am so sick and tired of us looking at this debate as if it's a choice between abortions in this country and no abortions. No, it is a choice between abortions in this country that are safe and abortions in this country that are absolutely unsafe. And I will never, ever, over my dying body, submit women to that in this country ever again. But the war on Planned Parenthood is not just a war over a woman's right to an abortion. It is a war over a woman's right to health care. 1 in 5 women in this country get their primary care and their preventative care through Planned Parenthood. And what Dan Donovan said is that, oh, the women in New York will be okay. Well, when I go to the National Guard, I don't have a New York flag on my right shoulder. I have an American flag on this right shoulder, and I care about the rights of American women throughout the country. Thank you.
I respect women and their control on their own body, and the abortion facility has to be out there. And for those women who chooses to go that way, it is their own personal opinion, for personal decision. I respect that, and to that extent, I support that. And again, there's an issue also with that comes along with that. That should be a different topic, that has to be dealt with. But I support Planned Parenthood and also the women's control of their own body. They can make those decisions. I respect that. Thank you.
Abortion's a very simple issue for me. I trust and respect women to make their own healthcare decisions. And it's that's the end of my answer in total. But since I have more time, I would like to point out to Republicans, in many countries in Europe, actually abortion is illegal after 20 weeks. And yet the abortion rates there are a lot higher than they are here. Abortion rates in America have been coming down, which we should be touted. But Republicans want to just demonize again and again American women, and that's only exemplified by the failure they have at the top in the White House.
We're unanimous. I believe that it is a woman's complete right to have sovereignty over her own body. That is it. And we also need to ensure that women have access to the necessary care that they need, all of their reproductive care. So yes, I will fight to ensure that not only we continue to ensure that Roe v. Wade stays in place, but that we also ensure that women's health is a priority. And we also need to ensure that equal pay for equal work is a priority. And we also need to ensure that we take care of those who take care of us. Thank you.
Okay, just to be fair, we went this way, now we're going to go this way, but then I'm going to start in the middle. Okay.
You're the best, Barbara. I know. Who's better than you? Nobody.
Okay, but we're starting this way. Okay. Where do you stand on sanctuary cities?
I stand with sanctuary cities. Immigration reform and lack thereof is costing us money. In the next 10 years, it's going to cost us $197 billion to not have immigration reform. In the next 20 years, it will cost us $700 billion to not have immigration reform. So we have to protect those who are not able to protect themselves, and we're lucky to live here in New York. And your congressional leaders should be ready to fight for immigration reform. That is a Clean Dream Act, and starts with the Clean Dream Act. Thank you.
I think we should define what sanctuary cities are. Sanctuary cities are cities that want to have their police officers fighting real crimes rather than assisting Donald Trump's ICE officers at shaking down and harming the immigrant communities in the cities. That's what a sanctuary city is, and I stand with them. I'm the father of 2 immigrants because I adopted my niece and nephew from Japan when their mother passed away. So I've gone through the immigration process, the legal one, and it took years and money, and I'm one of the lucky ones. And so I feel with my heart and my soul that I will always stand with immigrants no matter how they came here, because I know, like most people, they're good, hard-working people who want to live the American dream.
I'm an immigrant in the country, right? I've been here for the last 27 years. I know what is the, how I really love these sanctuary cities in the sense, people like me, who is here, undocumented. I'm not undocumented, but I came in the proper way I can. But those immigrants who are undocumented live in fear all the time. And if the state government, the city government goes after them, they don't have any place to go. And I'm also part of the NYPD Immigrant Outreach Committee. What we do is we assure these immigrants here in Staten Island not to fear about the ICE. NYPD doesn't go after any immigrants, even if they're caught in some accident and tickets they get. When they found out he doesn't have a license or anything, or not the license part of it, but they're not going to report it to the ICE. That's what. There's no sharing of database between NYPD and the ICE. To that extent, NYPD completely ignores. They treat everybody as an immigrant and respectful immigrants. So I'm big on that. I'll do the best for the immigrants. I'm big on the DACA, and I also pathway to citizenship. So I'm on that. So I'm an immigrant. I will support that.
I gave Mohan my time. He's good.
Hey, you also did that once. It's paying back.
You're right. There are communities right now throughout America where undocumented, long-time, law-abiding residents of this country are afraid to report instances of fraud, abuse, rape, even murder. 21st century policing, if we care about criminal justice reform especially, 21st century policing has got to be intelligence-driven policing. And what this administration's boneheaded policy has done is they have pushed millions of people in this country to no longer want to talk to the police, to no longer want to tell the police about crimes. So they are deserving of so much more than this. They are deserving of so much more than ICE kicking in their door and tearing people out of their homes, tearing people away from their families. And I will be such a fighter on this issue if I'm blessed to be your member of Congress.
We talk a lot these days about what makes America great. And here in New York City, we know that it is our diversity that makes America great. The fact that all of us come from all over the world and make something bigger and greater here in America. And I don't believe that anyone should be deported for smoking marijuana or for jaywalking. In fact, nobody should be getting arrested for those things at all. So in that respect, I am committed to sanctuary cities, and I am committed to make sure that our police work is done fairly on Staten Island and all across America.
So we need the immediate removal of Stephen Miller from the White House. He's a known white supremacist. It's not even a debate. And here, as taxpayers, we pay for that. And if elected, I believe in using the office, our office, creatively. And if an immigrant, an undocumented, is scheduled for deportation or raided by ICE or harassed, bring them to my office. I want to intervene in every case, and I want to bring the book of this person's life to open up with their priest, their employer, their neighbors, their kids, their friends and family, to see who this person is. Do they contribute? Who is this? Is this a father? Who are we sending away? Perhaps it's someone we should recruit. So that's how I'd like to use that office.
Just a point of information. The debate was originally scheduled to end at 8. We're going to go to 8:15 so as to get in at least some more of the audience questions. This, again, is 2 questions. We're going to start with you, Max, okay, and come around this way. Okay, so it's, wait till I read both. What will you do to address...
Mike.
Forgot about that. What will you do to address disability rights? And what are you going to do about having the cap on Social Security contributions eliminated?
Sure. So when it comes to disabilities, right, the American Disability Act needs to be dramatically reinforced and expanded to include not just physical disabilities, but also mental health issues as well, which I think, an area in which I think it is sorely lacking. When it comes to Social Security, here's the first thing that I'm going to do about Social Security, and that is not wage a war on legal immigration in this country, because that is the only thing that will, economically speaking, keep Social Security alive. It is the most boneheaded, stupid economic policy. But number 2 is, we certainly need to explore lifting the cap on this for people who are making somewhere above $500,000 a year. I'm not interested in slapping another tax on someone in the middle class in this country, but certainly, if you're a wealthy individual in this city or throughout the country, you can kick in a little more on Social Security. It won't hurt. You've been doing pretty well the last couple of years. Now, what I'm sick and tired of, though, from this administration and this Republican Party is that they sap our public programs of funds. They've done it to the VA, they've done it to Social Security, they do it to everything. then they take a step back and they claim that government doesn't work. We've all seen this story before, but not anymore. Because government can work, government can be a force of change, and government can overcome problems, and government can overcome challenges. And I think we'll prove that in years to come.
Right now, executives are in the boardroom colluding to keep health care prices up by denying care to people who are disabled and people who can't afford it. We need to cut out the executives, bring down health care prices, and we could do that, once again, by passing Medicare for all in America, to get every single person the access to a doctor when they need it, and the best treatment that we have available. And as far as Social Security goes, we have to make sure we keep Social Security solvent for generations to come. And we could do that by making sure that millionaires and billionaires finally pay their fair share in taxes.
We should lift the cap on Social Security wages. It should be much higher. They can put in more. They can afford it. For disability rights, it's one of the saddest things of what started in Mike Pence's Indiana, the spread of pushing disabled Americans out of their Medicaid and imposing work requirements. It's an insult that a doctor tells you that you are disabled, here's a letter from me that I know you can't work. And to have to take that and prove and show that you're incapable of working. You should be trusted. If you're disabled, and it's another decision, like we talk about with women's rights, between a disabled person and their doctor that's being violated. And we're better than that. We can protect our most vulnerable Americans. And we can save disabled, the Medicaid for disabled people can be saved and has to be fought for.
All the mics are on that side at this point. Donovan voted for a bill that would require a person who is disabled to explain to a business owner why they need to put a ramp in or to make it accessible. Just let that sink in for a second. That's unbelievable. What we need to be ensuring that we're doing is we're allowing those who are disabled to be part of the conversation. They should be deciding how we write legislation to make sure that they are protected. As far as Social Security goes, I said I'm a man of action. I signed a pledge that within the first 180 days that I will introduce legislation to raise the cap on Social Security to $250,000. It is a must. It is the only way that we are going to keep it solvent, and I would surely be glad if I had to pay more to know that it will be there when I'm getting ready to retire, because the way we're going, it's not going to be.
I've got good news for you. That bill has already been written. It's been written by Bernie Sanders. It's called the Social Security Expansion Act. And what it does is, let's focus, we're talking a little bit about caps. Let's talk about what's being paid out to our retirees. Bernie Sanders' Social Security Expansion Act will raise the money going out to our retirees, because they haven't seen it go up in about a decade. And it does include an increase in the cap as well. The Democratic Party should be about getting more money into the people's pockets. We have so many policies that do that. And that's something that we need to talk about more. As a businessman, I'm really comfortable talking about it. $15 minimum wage gets more money in the young people's pockets. Expansion of Social Security gets more money in the retirees' pockets. How about cutting the lowest tax brackets instead of the top ones? That gets more money in the workers' pockets. That's what the party should be, more money in your pockets.
I'm a labor union guy, and I'm contributing to Social Security. And when I retire, the amount I'm going to get is not enough for me to live in the city. That's very, very low. And that needs to be increased. But legislation, when I'm in the Congress, I'm going to work with other unions, make sure that we get this passed. We make sure that we get this, increase the Social Security cap. And another thing is I want to talk about is there's a threatened, the Social Security, Medicare, everything is being threatened. The latest tax plan
We'll never get to everybody's questions,
Okay.
so please.
Okay. The latest tax plan is threatening the the Medicare. They're going to looking at privatizing it. That's one of the goal of the Trump's tax plan now. We need to be vigilant. We need to safeguard that. We don't want to lose that. So we'll work on that. I'll do the best I can. Thank you.
Okay, the next question from the audience is going to start with Mr. Sperling. Okay? Where have the missteps in our free trade policies been? Where have the missteps in our free trade policies been, and how can we move towards a level playing field for American workers?
We have to make sure that American industries are protected here, especially ones that are vital to the working class and the middle class of our country. We can't allow our jobs to be exported overseas at a rate in which new jobs, which pay enough, are not coming into our country. So we need to make sure that every single American can get a paycheck that allows them to live with a good quality of life. And we could do that by protecting the most vital and essential of American industries. And we also have to make sure that emerging industries like information technology are unionized, so that workers in emerging industries also cannot be taken advantage of.
So when I started my campaign, I got an office. I wanted a beautiful cloth American flag with gold fringe, just like that one. And I found a local place that had one, Gravesend flag, in the district. I got excited. And I asked, you know, let me take it, whatever. I'm like, I'm sure it's American, right? And there was a hesitation. And he said, you can't buy an American-made cloth flag. There's no such thing. You can only buy a Chinese one. And to me, in this district, you hear a debate about who's standing and who's kneeling to the flag and who's disrespecting the flag. But no one bothers to care that you can't even buy an American one. And I'm deeply offended by that.
Plain and simple, we need fair trade in this country, not free trade. We need to hold other nations to environmental standards and labor standards, and to also standards of intellectual property, so they're not just stealing what hardworking entrepreneurial Americans dedicated their entire lives to creating. So I believe that because of these horrible laws, horrible agreements, we gave away millions and millions of jobs and helped to destroy the middle class in this country. Now, it's not just revising these agreements, though. We also have to invest in the American worker today. The government today has a program called Trade Adjusted Assistance. If you lose your job to outsourcing, we'll invest in your job training. We've got nothing if you lose your job to automation. We've got to adjust to the 21st century in this country, where you're going to more likely use your job to a machine than you will to someone outside this country. So it's time that we change. Thanks.
We have $550 billion trade deficit with other countries. And how we are going to resolve that? And that's what we have to bring it down. The way we can do that is China and Russia, they're taking all the infrastructural jobs in Africa and Middle East. They're taking over, they're into each and every infrastructure that goes on in those countries. And we are not doing that. We are not taking our share of those businesses. We only concentrate on the wars and other things, and as a peacemaker, but we're not getting into these trades. That's what we have to do. That will bring down our trade deficit of $550 billion. That's how we can achieve it. Our jobs are being outsourced. What I can do in Staten Island, we have a very good advantage being so close to Manhattan. I can make a IT hub here, bring the jobs here, and make the best of the best effort to get the jobs, more jobs here. Thank you.
I have a slightly different point of view on this. You know, unemployment in America right now is 4%. Obama left us with really low unemployment. People have jobs. The problem is the jobs they're just not paying. Most people haven't gotten a pay raise in a decade. So instead of focusing on all this stuff to get jobs, it's focusing on getting more money into people's pockets. that means changing our tax code so companies stop directing the economic gains up to the top and pay it down to the workers, lower the CEO-worker gap. That's tax policy, that's regulatory policy. And so that everyone who does have a job gets a raise. That's what the Democratic Party should be. It should be the party of raises.
We misstepped everywhere. We allowed globalization and the financialization of our country to completely decimate the middle class. What we need is to realize for ourselves that we have American ingenuity, and we need to be looking to ensure that we create the types of industries that put people to work. We have to do that now. That TAA program that's existed since 2001 to ensure that those that were losing jobs could be retrained. We're not using that to its max capacity. Instead, what we're doing is we're leaving people behind. And why is that happening? Because lobbyists are allowing corporations to ship our jobs overseas and then to give them tax incentives to do so. So the only way that we're going to get out of this mess is if we get the corporations out of DC.
I want to apologize to people who submitted a question that we didn't get to. I'm sorry about that, but I have to now give them the ability to make their closing statements. Mr.
So just to further expand about my anger at not being able to buy a cloth American flag that was made in this country, I believe that the reason I'm here and the reason that I'm a great candidate for this district, as I humbly ask you for your support, is just that, is protecting our values and our trades and our manufacturing and the things that, in terms of, like, in my union, my best friend Rusty, 4th generation. I mean, this is a trade that was passed from father to son to daughter, and to make sure that that lineage will continue, that we will fight for that type of labor here in this district and let these decisions be heard nationally in the way that they affect policy in every part of this country, and pushing back on Janus versus AFME, protecting unions, standing up for workers' rights, and also standing up for immigrants. What the family I come from, the family many of you come from, and protecting both of those things. I think they're inexplicably, that's a hard word to say, inexplicably linked, labor and immigration. And I think that that's a core of who I am. And I believe in the general, that will be the topic that if I get to go against Grimm, that'll be the one that I can beat him on labor and on immigration. And I think that's the secret to winning.
My name is Paul Sperling, and again, I'm so proud to be the only born and raised Staten Islander in this race, as you all know by now. If you want health care for yourselves and your families that is affordable, that is top quality, I'm the candidate for you. If you want schools in our community with the resources to give every child the individual attention they need to learn, I am the candidate for you. If you want careers here in our community that pay enough to raise a family here in our community, I'm the candidate for you. And if you want an end to the political corruption that is destroying this country, I am the candidate for you. I ask you to stand with me, Paul Sperling, in the Democratic primary this June 26th. Thank you.
I want to just take a minute. I want to take a minute to respond to a few of the things that have been said about me over the course of this race. Because, you know, I think a few of my candidates took their Wheaties this morning and they decided to focus on me. All right? So, there's been an allegation that I have taken corporate PAC money filtered through PACs like Pro-Choice NARAL and Citizens United, Vote Vets, the Working Families Party, all these entities that have endorsed me. That there's a vast left-wing conspiracy to pick the one guy who has rejected corporate PAC money. I'm legitimately ripping up checks from corporations. Ripping them up. But no, we're going to filter it through other PACs. You know what, folks? We've got to be done with these lies. But this is not about me. This is about changing the very fabric of this country. This is about regaining what is the quintessential story of America, which is a strong middle class in America that doesn't run away from problems but runs to them. So today I make a pledge that if I lose this primary, the very next day I will become a super volunteer for whoever the Democratic nominee is. Because we got to win this race. That's what matters most. Flipping this seat, flipping the House, changing politics in this country. Thank you so much again.
United we stand.
As I said before, I've been in the community for the last 27 years. I've been part of each and every sphere of activities that goes on. I'm not a man of speech, I'm a man of action. That's what I've been doing. I won't wait to see something. When I see something, I do something about it. I got into police because of neighborhood policing, because there's so much vandalism was going on. I got into police. For the last 14 years, I've been addressing that. Union, 20 years in union. I did the best. I'm the president of 2,000 employees, members for 8 years. I did telecommuting, introduced telecommuting, I did the website, I did everything first of its kind. And then interfaith. I did the best to bring all the religions together. That's what we do all the time. We have every monthly meeting. We do that. The interfaith community recognized me for my service. The labor community recognized me for my services. I'm not here to come and talk and speak. I do the action. That's what we do. We don't go out and say, I have done that. Without experience, we are talking, I will do this, I will do that, but I've done that. That is the difference I'm going to give to you. So, come to me. I'm available 24 hours a day. Community members comes to me, call me at the middle of the night. Anytime I go and do the best I can. That's who I am. I'll make a big difference. I'm the more overall experienced person in this group. And I can do that. I can do that. I have the international trade businesses. I can do that. So I can't come and talk about I can do this and do this. I've done that. I will do it. I will do the best for you. Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to thank Swing Left. I'd like to thank the Democratic Party. I'd like to thank Wagner College for organizing it. I'd like to thank my fellow Democrats up here who are running for office, and we're all doing our best. 15 months ago, Donald Trump placed his hand on the Holy Bible and swore an oath to all of us to faithfully execute the office of the President and to the best of his ability to preserve, protect, and defend our Constitution. Yes, impeach now. This President puts his son-in-law's buck-raking above our national interests. Yes, impeach now. Now, I've heard Stephen Miller complained about up here. I've heard the word fighting and courage talked about a lot. But I feel like among the candidates here, I'm the one standing up and saying to you that the next Democratic Congress is going to impeach this man for his high crimes and his frequent, flagrant public violations of his oath of office to all of us. So I encourage you to go to yesimpeachnow.org and support my campaign, because I can't do this alone, but I'm doing it for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thanks to one and all of you. You know, every morning I get up and I go to work, and my goal is to help young people believe in themselves. And I believe that the way that you do that is you show enough appreciation and consideration to them, that they first start to believe in you. And I believe that this seat can be flipped if those who are voting for the candidate believe in them. And I believe that the reality of that means that you have to have no smoke and mirrors. So I don't mean to drag in a reality that maybe none of us here as Democrats wish to talk about. The Blue Dog Democrats take money from corporations, from Big Pharma, from Monsanto, from Walmart.
It's the truth, young man.
This is the reality. So if you need to look it up, let me know, and I'll let you know where to go. Max Rose has signed a fundraising agreement with Joe Crawley That's where the money comes from. You need to believe in your candidate. You need to believe in each other. I have told you that I have the experience. I have told you that I have worked for this community tirelessly. Look at my record and show me where to show up and ask me what you need and tell me what to do. And that is going to be the responsive representative that I will be for you. Not for me, for you. Thank you.
We're just about over, but I didn't expect any candidate to be named in a closing remark, so you get like 30 seconds.
Sure. Well, I think that says something. If you're going to talk about me when it's your opportunity to present your vision for how you can change this island. So if you want to talk about fundraising, let's talk about the fact that I have raised more in this district than every other person on this stage combined their entire fundraising. So again, Joe Crowley.
From the oligarchy, from corporate donors. That's from where.
So with that, everybody, have a wonderful night. I look forward to seeing you out there, all right?
Yeah, right.
All right, well, thank you all for coming and asking questions.
I believe in that growth.